Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We are back with another episode of Daily Palantir. On today's show, number one, we're going to talk about price action. We had some things happen in the macro economy. Palantir got a little bit of a bump today, so we're going to be talking about that. Number two, Palantir signed a new partnership with a company in Italy. They just did a boot camp in Italy 2 days ago. Now they have a new partnership with one of those companies in Italy, so I want to talk about that partnership. And then finally, Palantir hosted their first series of webinars today with Lowe's. Now we found out back in January that Palantir was working with Lowe's and they were actually collaborating together. Today in that webinar, I was in there and I got to see a lot of different versions of what Palantir is building for Lowe's and how they're working together. Some interesting stats on how Palantir is saving Lowe's a lot of money based on the features they're building for them. So we're going to get into all of that. Let's get into it. All right, first thing let's do is take a look at what's going on with the stock right now here today. 2283 after hours, 2284, up 1.87% on the day. Why is Palantir up about 2% on the day? The entire market rallied today into the end of the day. And primary reason for that, S&P 500 up about almost 1%, 0.75%, is because the PPI and CPI data, which is the consumer price index and the producer price index, came in hotter than expected. CPI yesterday came in at about 3.5 headline, 3.8 core. And then PPI on some metrics, it was good, came in line with expectations at 2.2. Other expectations came a little bit higher, 2.4, if you look at the monthly versus the yearly. So both reports not really signaling that inflation is definitively trending towards the downside. That's the bad news. The market took in that bad news. They observed it. They reconciled with it. And then they said, we're buying the dip. And what I'm seeing here, at least from my macroeconomic standpoint, is that the macro, inflation, jobs, etc., is not enough to stop what the market wants. And what the market wants right now, quite frankly, in my opinion, I believe is AI. And that doesn't mean they just want AI stocks, but they want AI as a momentum building tailwind for the entire market. And we're seeing a variety of companies that are putting up numbers because of AI. I believe in Q1, most companies are going to crush their earnings off the backs of using AI as an ability, as a framework to either raise revenues, increase operating margins, or decrease costs. And if companies can do all three of those things, we got Meta upgraded today to $600, Amazon all-time highs today, upgraded to $225 at Jefferies. I think companies like Palantir will do very well because they are at the epicenter of what's going on with AI. So my macro take here, and the reason why Palantir's up, and yes, it's not at $27, $28 like it was before, $27.50 it topped out, but the fact that it's really holding the line at $21 to $23 is exciting. And the reason it was up today is because even though bad inflation data does hurt Palantir, because that means rates will probably stay higher for longer, the market seems, quite frankly, to not care about inflation. They care about having exposure to really good companies. Palantir, one of those companies, market wanted exposure. Stock went up 2% on the day. Okay, let's talk about another partnership that Palantir signed today in Italy. This thing was really interesting from what I saw. Shout out to Lord Harrigroom for posting this on Twitter today. A new partnership is born. Open Data Playground, which is an IT services and IT consulting firm in Italy, becomes a strategic alliance partner with Palantir. So if you go right here, Open Data Playground, I've never heard of this company before. Their headquarters are in Italy. And what's very interesting about this is that they are a IT services consulting firm for the Italian region. Now, Palantir just had a boot camp in Italy. I would imagine that Open Data Playground was probably one of the companies that was part of that boot camp. And it makes sense that they're creating this strategic alliance right now. So the CEO at Open Data Playground from LinkedIn said, I am thrilled to announce a new strategic partnership that marks a new chapter in our mission to facilitate access to innovation and education through hackathons. Open Data Playground has just become a Palantir strategic alliance partner, representing a significant step forward in offering new technology and training opportunities to our hackathon participants. And as you can see a little bit down here, the partnership with Palantir highlights our commitment to providing not only theory, but training opportunities that prepare students to face real-world challenges. Through projects and hackathons supported by Palantir's Foundry, students have the opportunity to work on real use cases, applying their knowledge in complex scenarios that reflect the current challenges of global enterprises. This approach not only enhances technical skills, but also develops problem-solving, critical thinking, and teamwork abilities, transferable skills that are sought after in any sector. Why is this an interesting partnership to me? The thing I read in that kind of PR LinkedIn post that the CEO wrote is that Palantir's Foundry and Palantir themselves are going to be supporting many of the students in these hackathons that Open Data works with. So Open Data, IT services consulting firm. A lot of these consulting firms end up hosting hackathons, not only to find new talent for their companies, but also as just like community building events and things that propel the brand of those companies to get more mainstream, especially in their own region. So what's interesting here is that Open Data wants Palantir to be a strategic partner in helping them host and build these hackathons. Now, when I think of that, I get really excited because when I think of hackathons, I think of the AWSs of the world, the Azures of the world, the GCPs of the world, the GitHubs of the world, all of these GitLabs, all of these companies that are not only sponsoring these events, but they are strategically trying to align themselves with the best talent in the world. And if you're at a hackathon, I've never participated in a hackathon, but if you're watching this video and you're a software engineer, it's pretty intense. And it's one of the most intellectually stimulating exercises because you're with people. It's like 24 hours straight. You just have a ton of Red Bull and you're coding and you're doing really hard intellectual work to try to solve problems. Palantir being a partner to one of the companies in Italy has a couple of implications for investors. Number one, it means Palantir is expanding their brand to the Italian market, which I think is very exciting. We know that Palantir does work with Ferrari, so they have a little bit of a brand there. But Palantir is kind of ingratiating themselves with all the high-level engineering talent that's in Italy. Number two, because their brand is getting out there, one could argue all of these Italian engineers that are now having to work with Foundry start to get exposed with what that software looks like. And if you believe that, and I believe that Palantir is a tech moat and that Foundry is a software that is fundamentally more sophisticated and advanced than some of the other data analytics platforms that are out there, a lot of those kids that are graduating, going to college, getting ready to work at a job, they may not work at Palantir. They may work at a company. And when they get into that company and then assess the data pipeline that that company has, they might say, you know what? A couple of years ago, I was working with Foundry at this hackathon, and that was a great experience. Why don't you guys have Foundry? Something CodeStrap has talked about for a long time is that developers need to be the evangelists internally within companies to have greater adoption for a software like Palantir if Palantir can't get that company to be at a boot camp. A lot of time change happens within a company when one of the lead engineers is just like, dude, I don't care how much we need to spend. We need to totally revamp how we're doing our processes here. I think this is a very small partnership, but it's one of those partnerships that if Palantir can do these across the entire world, host and sponsor hackathons in all different parts of the world with different IT service consulting firms, I think that's going to be substantial for the brand. I think that's going to create more awareness for their software and why it's better than a lot of other types of software, specifically for data analytics. And I just think it's a better way to get more companies to look at Palantir and say, hey, maybe we should take them a little bit more seriously. So that boot camp that happened 2 days ago, very exciting. Seems like we're going to get a couple different partnerships out of that boot camp based on what Palantir is doing in Italy. And even if we don't get any customers from that boot camp, I think it was important they got it done. And now we need to move on to doing the next 100 boot camps all throughout Italy. Because if we can just keep expanding those boot camps, not only in Italy, but across the world, customer count will increase. Customer count increasing means top line revenue will increase. Top line revenue increasing means the stock theoretically has a shot to do a lot better. So overall, really good partnership between Palantir and Open Data Playground in Italy. All right, last thing we got to talk about is this Lowe's partnership that I thought was really interesting here today. So Palantir held a webinar, and they're hosting a lot more of these webinars. They're going to have their second webinar with PG&E coming up next week. Here's Arnie, who grabbed a couple of screenshots from this webinar that I thought were really, really interesting. So how Palantir helped Lowe's reduce overdue activities by 75%. So these were some of the slides from the presentation. Individuals' personalized, prioritized work queue led to a 75% reduction in overdue activities in the pilot group. This increased agent satisfaction. This gave more transparency across all their systems. And this allowed the transformation of the reassignment process that users were dealing with in the actual Lowe's Foundry combination Lowe's AIP combination that they were working with together. On top of this, they had a really interesting stat. We're saving on average $40,000 a day by using AIP, which is about $14 million annually using the AIP customer service engine. Now, customer service engine is one of the operational workflows that exists in a series of different AIP workflows. Remember AIP Now? We talked about that a couple weeks ago. AIP Now, there's a bunch of different, if you go to the website, workflows that exist in real estate and media and healthcare. And so for Lowe's, they're using one of those in the context of retail, which is operationalizing AI through the customer service engine. And as you can see this right here, James Stewart, VP of Finance at CAS Investment, says, with AIP, we can now process over 100x more leads with the same amount of resources. This has reduced our lead processing time by 40%. And then you got someone at General Mills, who's a senior director at the supply chain for supply chain digital transformation, says we're saving on average about $40,000 a day, which is about $14 million annually. And it's really only deployed to part of our network, indicating, hey, we are saving a lot of money and we only deploy this to one part of the network. Eventually, we're going to be deploying it to more parts of the network. And if that same level of savings that's happening in one part of the network can expand, we should be saving a lot more than just $14 million annually. Westfield, one of the Palantir employees, one of the engineers at Palantir, he says, one of my favorite aspects of AIP now is the ability to touch fully constructed apps, change them without starting from zero. It's the best way for builders to bootstrap. What he's saying right there is basically, hey, when you have AIP now, you can automatically download some of these different workflows, apply it to your data without having to change or reconstruct everything. And you have a fully constructed application built on top of Foundry and AIP that you can then use for whatever you want to be able to use. Based on the success of these AIP Now workshops, I think Palantir is trying to roll out a lot more of these workshops. So here's Chad, who is one of the main engineers at Palantir, and here's what he posted today on Twitter. We are accelerating another week, another video plus webinar with a customer. Join us on April 18th at 2 p.m. You can use the link below. I will leave the link in the description for anyone who wants to register. It seems like Palantir is basically looking at their clients and they're saying, hey, can you please help us market the savings we are building for you in these custom webinars? I was in the webinar. It was only 45 minutes, so not a lot of time. And show the general public how you're using different elements of AIP to either save money, decrease costs, increase revenue, whatever it may be. And I think that's really bullish, and I think that's really exciting. AIP Now, again, I think we're going to get more clarity on it over the coming weeks, definitely going into earnings on, well, we don't have a date yet, but likely in May. And we're going to see what Palantir's new approach is to the small business sector. I think they had a decision to go for a year ago, which was either the consumer market, the TAM is infinite, right? Billions of people, or the small business market. Smaller TAM, but definitely, I think, more of Palantir's wheelhouse, given that they already work with enterprises. And I think they pick small businesses because they know they can modularize Foundry, AIP, Apollo, etc. in a way, which is what AIP Now is essentially doing it, and offer that to small businesses. So I think going into earnings, we are going to see an acceleration of them showcasing different use cases of AIP Now, which are smaller modular versions of AIP terminals built for the end user. And as a result of that, we should probably see more adoption, maybe even not in this quarter, maybe over the coming quarters, of small businesses reaching out to Palantir, maybe some of them in Italy, saying, hey, we don't want to buy, $20 million of Palantir, but we do have a budget of $500,000. Is there any way we can work together? And I think Palantir will gladly figure out a way to take that money and help clients get even better. So I think these webinar approaches is another way of, yes, it's marketing, but it's also another way of kind of strategic go-to-market distribution. I'm not saying these webinars are getting millions of views, but the people that are joining or registering for it seems like they're interested. And it's kind of like a mini boot camp without a legitimate, full in-person boot camp, but just another way for Palantir to continue going to market and getting the word out there about AIP. All right, that's it for me. Thank you everybody for listening and watching. DailyPalantir.substack.com. Please subscribe to that newsletter. If you have not subscribed, you'll get a written version of the video that you got here today. And we'll keep going from there. Palantir Weekly tomorrow. We got a lot to talk about Friday night, so I'll see you guys there. Thank you everybody again for listening and watching. I'll see you in the next one.